Rag and Bone Man, and before that, Lifehouse, One for the Pain. Might be pain for Victorians because the budget is about to be brought down. Got Ricky Lambert, our expert on politics from Flow News 24, back into our studio. And Ricky, the Victorian budget is the first state budget to come out. And, well, it's going to be very interesting to see how Daniel Andrews manages debt. $155 billion is Victoria's debt. Now, that's additional debt, everyone, to the Commonwealth debt of $1 trillion that Scott Morrison has just brought up with his budget just a week ago. So, Ricky, tell us how this debt, if you like, this ratio of debt to income and of other OECD countries, how does this work?
Well, there's a big scheme all over the world with governments where they're quite happy to say, let's just keep running up public debt. And then Australian politicians will say, well, our debt to GDP ratio, we can afford that debt because our public debt, our government debt, is sitting at manageable levels compared to other parts of the world. But Australia's personal debt, the household debt, this is like not just credit cards, but it's your mortgage as well in particular. We hold a much higher level of household debt than other parts of the world. So the governments are going and running up, if you like, a second mortgage on our behalf to the tune of approaching $1 trillion in forward estimates in the federal budget. Victoria with 155, I estimate it's about another trillion of state debts on top of the federal debts. So as a nation, they've run up $2 trillion in debt on our behalf, plus all of the mortgage debt everyone's carrying. Our capacity as individuals, families, households, farmers to service that debt is only so limited. Whereas these other countries, the debt to GDP ratio, they don't have the same level of household debt we do. Okay,
the deficit, and this is the question that the Liberals are bringing out in their particular commentary. Michael O'Brien is the Liberal leader. I see that he was out campaigning about the problems with the state budget that Victoria are about to hand down. He talks about this $23.3 billion in 2020-21.
Look, it's a really important conversation, and I'm glad to see a Liberal party somewhere talking about debt and deficit and getting it down. Remember, the age of entitlement was over under Joe Hockey and Tony Abbott, that we were going to bring back budgets that delivered surpluses. Debt is now, the old Gordon Gekko thing from the movies about greed is good. Well, now in governments, debt is good. They're actually quite happy to carry debt and push all of the repayments off to the never. And that is really concerning for us and for our kids and our grandkids, is the amount of debt that's being run up on our behalves by governments that they don't seem to matter whether it's Labor or Liberal. They'll keep running it up now. At least the Liberal opposition in Victoria are making a stand on that, and good on them for doing it.
Okay, let's have a look at, say, something like land tax. We mentioned about this particular topic earlier in the week, that Victorians and farmers in particular are going to be under the microscope when it comes to a new or increased amount of land tax. Values of properties have gone up considerably, particularly with the real estate boom, and farming properties particularly. We've seen massive increases in arable farmland, of course, which Victoria has a greater percentage of that than other states. So the context now for Victorians where a new system of tax to service this debt would need to be brought in place.
Yeah, there's talk about, because of the huge amount of additional spending, over $1 billion that's going to be spent on mental health alone. There's going to be a tax supposedly either a specific mental health related tax, or is this why they're jacking up the land tax to pay for that mental health spending? And yes, mental health has been significantly underspent, and I'd be concerned to see how much of that's going into regional areas. But why are taxpayers having to fork out the cost of the failures of the government to actually adequately resource mental health in the last 5 to 10 years in Victoria?
Interesting comments, and it's going to be for those seeing what Daniel Andrews and his government hands down in Victoria. It'll be watched pretty closely too, I would have thought, in New South Wales and South Australia. It's good to have you talk to us about it this morning, Ricky.